Today I'm going to teach you step by step how to make this Christmas door swag using the Deco Mesh Woodland Ruffle method. Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Come on in. Today we're going to make a Merry Christmas door swag. Let me just take a quick moment to welcome anyone new here to the channel. Stillwater's is all about DIY wreath and door swag tutorials. We've got new tutorials uploading every single week. So if you like that sort of thing, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and join us. And for my friends who have been on the channel for a while, thank you for coming back. I so appreciate you. You guys, I will leave a full materials list for you below in the description of this video in case you'd like to recreate this beauty. If you'd rather just purchase this completed swag that we make today, I'll leave a link for that in the comments below as well. You guys, we're going to build today's swag on a 24-inch pine base. When you order these, they come to you looking just like this, pretty worse for the wear. So the first thing we need to do is fluff this guy out. So you'll see at the top, you've got a round loop. This is for hanging. I always just give that a little tug and make sure it's nice and secure. Sometimes they're not attached as stable as what I would like for them to be. So we're going to take a couple minutes and just fluff this guy out, kind of like you would a Christmas tree. And so we're just going to open up all these branches, make sure that we essentially have the same number of pine ties, that's what these are called, pointing to the left, the right, and forward. Once you've got your pine base fluffed out, it should look something like this. Basically like an upside down artificial Christmas tree, with the widest part being at the top and then the narrow part being the bottom. This is what your swag will look like on the back. It's got a pretty heavy duty wire spine. So this is actually a nice sturdy base for door swags. And then at the tip, guys, there's always one long, extra long piece. I typically just fold that up and twist it around on itself a time or two. It's a little bit too long for my liking. And the first thing we need to do is prep our pine base with some Deco mesh. I just grabbed this 10-inch mesh from Hobby Lobby. You guys, if you're new to wreath making, Hobby Lobby this time of year has their Christmas things on sale for 50% off already. And I don't know if it's every week or every other week, but it's a great time to snag some supplies. And look how pretty this mesh is, guys. Again, it's 10 inches and red, white, and green. But as I unroll it, it's got a really funky, cool pattern to it. I think that's adorable. So we're going to cut our Deco mesh so that we can then load our base. There's no hard and fast set number of pieces of Deco mesh that you'll need for your base. Every pine swag base comes to you with a different, it's not always the same amount of density. Typically I use between 14 and 18 pieces of Deco mesh. So I always start out by cutting 14, and then if I need more later, I will cut more. And I cut my pieces between 20 and 24 inches in length. And guys, I don't really measure it. I just lay my roll in front of me. I pull that straight up with my arm at a 90-degree angle, and then I cut. And so if we measure this, let's see where we came in at. That's right at 23 inches. And so I know if I hold my arm basically in the same position, every time that I cut, those pieces essentially will be the same length. But if you feel more comfortable to measure, go ahead and do so. Let's go ahead and cut our Deco mesh pieces, and then I'll meet you back here. Once you have all of your Deco mesh pieces cut, go ahead and grab a clothespin or a chip clip, and I'll show you why this is super helpful. We're going to make ruffles with our Deco mesh pieces to stuff into our pine swag base. If you're new to working with Deco mesh, guys, Deco mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as creators to help prevent that fray is always ideal, and the ruffle method is great for that. I grabbed my bolt cutters here just to use as a weight. So to make a ruffle, guys, you're going to grab one piece of your Deco mesh and lay it in your work area, curl side up. Place something in the middle of that just to hold your piece of mesh in place. And at one end, you're going to roll your end 2 or 3 times into what we call curls. There's 1 and 2. Then grab your clip, give that curl a pinch, spin that piece of Deco mesh around, do the same thing at the other end, 1, 2, 3, and what that does is tuck away the raw edge of your Deco mesh to help reduce the fray. Once we've got our curls, then we're going to scrunch and gather this mesh back into our hands to finish making our ruffle. Once you get to the end, just release that clip, pinch that piece of Deco mesh in the middle, and you've just made a ruffle. And essentially what a ruffle is a curl on each end and a ruffle in the middle, hence the ruffle. And as we add these guys into our base, we're going to start at the top and place our ruffles all the way down one side and then come back up all the way up the other side. And so to add your ruffle into your base, you're just going to find 2 neighboring pine ties. Take that ruffle and press it all the way down at the base between those 2 ties. And then give those pine ties a couple of tight twists to secure that guy in. So we've just added our first ruffle. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. So you'll grab a piece of Deco mesh, lay it in your work area, curl side up, place something in the middle just as a weight, and on one end, you're going to roll that edge in 2 or 3 times to curl it. Take your clip and give it a pinch in the middle just to secure that guy. Spin your Deco mesh around and do the same thing on the other end. And then scrunch and gather that mesh back into your hand to finish creating that ruffle. Now we'll pinch our piece of Deco mesh right in the middle. We'll come back to our pine base, and immediately underneath the last ruffle we added, we'll find 2 neighboring pine ties. We're going to stuff that ruffle all the way down to the base and give those pine ties a couple of tight twists to secure our ruffle in. Fluff those out a bit. And we've just added our second ruffle. So go ahead and continue adding your ruffles all the way down your swag base and then all the way back up. If you have any gaps in the center, add a few more ruffles in. You may find that you need to cut a few more pieces. That's fine. Just make it as full as you want, and I'll meet you back here. All right, I've got my swag fully loaded with the Deco mesh, and look how stinking cute that is, guys. That Deco mesh is so pretty. Our base is nice and full. I did end up needing to cut 3 more pieces of the Deco mesh, which essentially ended up being that entire roll. So if you want to just go ahead and cut your entire roll, that should work perfectly for a 24-inch pine base. The next thing we need to do, guys, is to add our decorative sign. This sign came from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to flip this guy over And I'm going to cut off the hanger that came with it. We don't need that. You're welcome to save that for use later if you'd like to do so. Also, go ahead and plug in your glue gun. So to anchor our sign down into our swag, I'm going to actually use a crafting staple gun. These are really effective for heavier signs and embellishments to secure down your floral wire stems, zip ties, or pipe cleaners for attachment. They're basically heavy, more heavy duty, you know, than an office or desktop stapler, but not near as heavy as a garage stapler. So they're great to have around and pretty cheap. I'll leave a link for these below in case you're interested in grabbing one. If you don't have a crafting stapler, no worries. You can just use the hot glue and ribbon method. And so the hot glue and ribbon method, guys, basically means you put a good dollop of glue right on your sign. You lay your floral wire stem or whatever you're using to attach your sign down into the hot glue. You cut a piece of ribbon 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide, and you press that right on top of your floral wire stem and your glue, and you give it a good 10 minutes or so to dry before you attach it in. So because this is a heavier sign, I'm going to use 2 lightweight 16-inch long floral wire stems, and we're going to wrap this guy right around that metal spine that runs down our swag. So I'm going to add 2 stems right down the center, about 4 or 5 inches apart. And so I'm just going to lay this stem down, and then basically in the middle of that stem, I'm going to give it a staple. And then I'm going to fold that guy up and just give it a twist or two, just so it doesn't slide around while we're working with that. And then we're going to do the same thing below. Now the trick to using a craft or a stapler, guys, is the sign needs to be thicker than the staples or they'll come through the other side. So be mindful of that. Again, I'm going to just fold that guy in half. Not looking for perfection here, guys. No one's going to see it. And then for some extra security, just going to run a quick bead of glue right over that staple and give it a couple of minutes to dry. Once the glue has dried on the back of your sign, it's time to add this guy down in. I'm going to place my sign essentially right in the middle of our swag. And we're just going to take a few minutes and run our floral wire stems right down through our swag. That's why I recommend the stems, friends, instead of pipe cleaners, because they're more sturdy and they can just poke right through our base, and they're not as floppy as pipe cleaners. So identify where you want to lay your sign and then take a couple of minutes. Give yourself some grace, guys. This can take a couple of minutes, and poke those guys right down through, and then wrap them around the spine of your swag and cinch them in. All right, guys, this took me a little while. It took me about 5 minutes, so I've zoomed ahead. So definitely give yourself some grace when you're adding your sign down into a super thick swag base. Now that I know that I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to flip that guy back over and give those floral wire stems 5 or 6 tight twists at about 80% tension. You don't want to recess it into your swag so deeply that it gets lost in there. And then I'm going to trim off those excess bits of wire. I'll pinch those ends together so they're not pokey, and just curl them back in to the swag base. And then I'm just going to run a little line of glue right where that wire meets our spine, which will just keep it from sliding or slipping. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other set of wire bits. All right, now that we've got our sign firmly attached and that glue's had a chance to dry, we're going to add a bow. You guys, I actually made this bow on last week's Christmas bow tutorial. I'll leave a link for that below. It's just a 6-loop bow with a little button in the middle and some 11-inch tails. And we're actually going to add that right below our sign. Now I've actually got some pipe cleaners here that have secured this bow. I'm going to see if I can get this guy attached with just the pipe cleaners, but more than likely I'll need to use a floral wire stem. So go ahead and make a bow that's about 6 inches wide and attach that below your sign. Once you've got your bow added down in, I did end up needing to use a floral wire stem just because it's so dense. You're going to want to twist that around, you know, 6 or 7 times so that bow is nice and anchored in. Again, at about 80% tension. You don't want that to recede too far into the swag. I'm going to trim off my wire bits, and then just like before, grab my needle nose pliers and curl those guys back in. Because there's no weight to the bow, you don't need to add a dollop of glue. It'll be just fine as it is. We'll flip that guy back over. No need to fluff your bow until the very end, guys. So we've added our bow below the sign. And now we're going to add some ribbon tails right above the sign using the exact same ribbon. So the ribbon that I've used is actually just a 2.5 inch red and green and white, and a 1.5 inch red, green, and white. We're just going to make some tails. So we're going to turn this guy upside down so we can see exactly how long we want our tails to be. I don't like my tails to stick out too far beyond the swag. That seems pretty good, so we'll just double that over. I'll give you a measurement here in 1 second. Cut this guy off, and it looks like this piece, guys, is just shy of 22 inches for the 2.5 inch. So we'll make a 19 or 20 inch piece of the 1.5 inch ribbon. It's always better to go a little bit long with your ribbon. You can always trim it off, but you can't add more on. I'm going to dovetail the ends of my tails so they match my bow below. And to dovetail, guys, you just take your ribbon, you fold it in half, and on the folded side, not the open side, you're going to come down about 1 inch or so on the folded side and cut up diagonally. And then when you open that up, you've got that nice pretty dovetail. So let's do that to all of the ends of both of these ribbons. And then I want you to just lay out your 2.5 inch wide ribbon strip. Place that 1.5 inch wide ribbon strip right on top so it's centered, essentially. Not looking for perfection here, guys. Then we're going to fold this ribbon stack in half just to identify that center point. We're going to pinch and pleat at that center point, like so. And turn that into a V by bending it down over our thumb. Just a loose V here. And we're going to come into our swag. It's still upside down here, guys, and we're going to add that right above our sign in the center. Just find a couple of neighboring pine ties and give that a good twist. Secure that guy down in. Then I'll just roll those pine ties back so they're not as visible. And we've just added 2 ribbon tails. We're going to fuss with those ribbon tails here in just a bit, but we need to get our embellishments added in. So next we're going to add this Christmas glitter pick. So the decorative piece of this pick here, guys, is about 16 inches. Just peel off my tag here. Nobody wants to see that. It comes with a really long, probably 10 inches or so, stem. We don't need it that long, so I'm going to use my heavy-duty cutters here and trim that off, leaving about, a 4 inch or so stem. There we go. That's more manageable. And picks are almost always on a wire stem, guys. I actually got this from Craft Outlet, I believe. And everything is wire-based, so you can bring it to life and kind of fluff it like you would a floral bush. So I'm just bringing all these bits of cuteness out and about so it's more three-dimensional and less two-dimensional. And we're actually going to add this guy right here above our sign. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to work that down into our base. We might need to bend that a little bit so it doesn't lean forward. Perfect. Once you've got that piece added in where you want it, you're going to go ahead and add some hot glue down in there to anchor it in. You don't want to run the hot glue right on that spine like we normally do, guys, because it's at a focal point of your swag. And if you drip glue everywhere, it's going to be hard to hide. I've also got a glitter Christmas ball pick. I've got 6 different balls on this pick. And I'm actually going to take my small snips here and just trim these guys off right at the base. We want to leave that stem attachment so that we can get these guys added into our swag. So we're just going to cut apart this pick. Then I'll give you those 6 ball picks that we can add in to our swag. So what I'm going to do here, guys, I like to dry place my attachments first and make sure that I'm happy with them. Again, we'll come back to our ribbon tails when we're all finished. So what I'm going to do is just place them without gluing them all the way around my base, and then we'll glue them in. All right, I like the placement of those. So now I'm going to go ahead and commit. So I'm going to pull them out one by one, run about an inch or so bead of glue right on that stem. I wouldn't do that over your swag just in case you get a drip. And anchor those guys in. Just give them a good push. Make sure they're grabbing a hold of something and they'll glue in just fine. Let's speed ahead while we get these guys glued in. All right, guys, we're not going to mess with those ball ornaments while they continue to dry. Give them a solid 5 minutes or so to anchor down. So let's go ahead and work on our faux loops. If they collapsed at all while you were building, just go ahead and fluff them back up by opening with your hand. Looks like my loops fared pretty well. It's just the tails that need some attention. I'm actually going to curl them just a little bit, I think. So to curl them, guys, this is just a 1-inch cardboard insert from the center of a roll of 10-inch Deco mesh that I keep in my toolbox. And the great thing about wired ribbon is that it's going to hold its shape any way that you would like for it to. So kind of like a curling iron, I just wrap that right around there, all the way to the center of the bow, or as close to it as I can get. And release. And that'll give your ribbon tails some extra personality. You can do it as tightly or as loosely as you would like. How stinking cute. Let's do the same thing up here. I'm kind of feeling like these might be too long, guys. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what a curl looks like up here. Looks pretty cute. All right, guys, the next thing I want to do is grab my small wire snips and any of the pine ties that are still in our swag that are sticking way out. I'm just going to trim a little bit, actually I'm going to use my heavier duty, not excessively. I'm just going to give it a little haircut. Sometimes they jut out more than what we would like, especially at the top. So just trim them down a little bit And kind of like the ribbon theory, guys, you can always take more off, but you can't put it back on. So cut gingerly. There we go. And that is it, guys. We are finished with this beauty. Look how stunning that is. My mat is 24 inches in length, and this definitely surpasses that length. I would guess it's about 30 inches long. Definitely a great statement piece. I hope you enjoyed creating with me today. If you did, be sure to give this tutorial a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. Thanks for spending time with me today, friends. Happy crafting.